feel free to start joining. We're trying to see if we can get ourselves back to hybrid. I know that whole staying at home can certainly have its benefits, but so can being in person. It was some of those rich discussions that we would sometimes have around the complexities of some of the programs that we're actually doing and having those conversations with each other. So I do look forward to some of the in-person again as we get ourselves underway. I know I'm a little bit more distant than I usually am as part of the sessions, but we'll certainly get to the point where, you know, if we're up face-to-face even. But of course, we've still got Melbourne, so I will always have the online component, and I'll record as well for later on in posterity so that you can go watch it. Now, getting in and kicking off, if there are any issues at all at any point, please feel free to come off mute and advise so, considering we're back in a room, in a new room. I haven't been here for well over a year now. I feel like I've been sort of living in a bubble for some time. So it's just a different kind of presenting to presenting to a room than it used to be. And I'm not seeing some faces these days. So, you know, it's always good when you've got the video on. Now, we are going through the June. We didn't end up having a session last month. We had some difficulties with getting a speaker, and there was an awful lot that was actually happening. Hey, welcome. Hey, they've got someone coming into the room. That's very exciting. So Mel's, we should be back here soon. So there'll be 2 people in a minute grabbing some lunch. Okay. So kicking off and getting underway, thank you very much for joining. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land in which we meet today and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend my respect to any elders past, present, emerging that actually are here today. Okay. General code of conduct that we have in terms of all of these sessions, you can find them, you know, both online through Microsoft as well as sort of other areas. We just ask that you actually be kind and considerate and courteous and patient and all the fun stuff that generally comes with being online and virtual as well. Okay, my name is Kirsty McGrath. For anyone that's actually new and has joined, I am a Microsoft 365 adoption consultant and a Microsoft MVP, and we are all up for our awards. So cross fingers at the 1st of July, we'll find out if I've hit my 5th award. So we'll see how we go. And we've got other MVPs that are also on the call. Welcome and good luck to you too. I don't know. So what have I actually been up to? I always do the whole, you know, what am I doing? Cakes, always having fun. I need to go back. It was my grandson's 5th birthday, so he got a Super Mario cake. I've been having some fun. I went to Brisbane. So, you know, all around the last course, I was up in Brisbane. I was making cookies and I was at the International Cake Show, but I also presented at the Brisbane user group up there, the Microsoft 365 Brisbane user group. It is actually recorded and I've put it into the presentation for you if you want to have a little bit more around hybrid learning and what it actually looks like in terms of hybrid learning space now. Some of the what's new in adoption. Okay, I always go, I get about sort of a fair whack in and go, oh, there's actually not that much. I always say that every time. And then I go, oh, there's way more than I thought. But considering it was 2 months worth of, you know, potential changes, there was actually less over the 2 months than there usually is. It would be equivalent to often what we would have in a month. So it's kind of, it's been a little quieter, but let's get started. In terms of the what's new to adoption, I have been speaking at the Collab Talk Ask Me Anything, because you can ask questions of Collab Talk, of which we answer. There is myself and plenty of others. It's run by Christian Buckley, who's a regional director over in the US. And as part of those questions, which you can ask through Facebook, he's got a group there, he's got groups on Twitter, he's got all over the place that you can go to ask questions. It's not just the end user side, it's also technical. So in terms of the technical questions that you might have, and he brings specialists from all over the world to answer your questions. They go on a recording and they go live. I think I'm on about 21 videos now in terms of answering questions with Collab Talk. We get together regularly and they're all the snippets of different questions that we answer. And there's I think now about 70 or more videos on there in terms of answering different questions for the community. No, so they're now up. I was actually involved in a discussion with Christian. This is Christian, and we did the whole what does learning look like in the hybrid workspace, had a bit of a chat about that in the AvePoint office hours. This is the Brisbane link that I said I would actually put in around what it looks like for hybrid learning. And please feel free to provide any feedback on that, because if you believe that there's something in particular that you think doesn't agree and or does. It's always like, what's not worked for you? What's been the biggest, fail? I have just recorded last Friday, had a film crew come into my home. Geez, I had to clean that up. And we had quite a lengthy discussion around, hybrid and what that actually looks like. And once I've got those all live and they've put them all up online along with Axiom IT, we'll say. There are some latest videos out on inside Microsoft Teams, some good ones to actually have a look at. Then the latest champs calls that have actually gone out there, if you haven't actually seen them, it's a good idea. It's run by Caruana. So she'll have lots going on across what's happening in adoption to keep you up to speed. The two podcasts, I had this up previously, but the two that I would recommend out of all of the podcasts would probably go Directors on Digital is a really good one. And I often will get, what is a scenario for my particular industry that would work well, or how could I use the tech for my industry? So the Microsoft stories and what they've got on the podcasts are actually really quite valuable. I highly recommend going and looking at some of those. Some of you may or may not be aware, but only recently Viva Goals was run out. So it's out there now. It's in its sort of preview mode. Viva Goals is now the 5th on the Viva banner. It was originally based on Alio being purchased. So it's very much around employee experience. It's aligning KPIs and strategy and working with managers and trying to bring them all into play so that when you actually look at, for example, your objectives and key results, how do you actually align up your organization with what you have in terms of expectations and staff performance? So it's this whole new component of how you all kind of work together, quite valuable, one that I would highly recommend getting yourself around in terms of employee experience to be able to support you. I've put in there, I think it's nearly a 60, 70 page adoption guide that they've actually put up there around Viva Goals. It's quite extensive. One I would recommend you, maybe have a bit of a look through if you're looking at putting on Viva Goals within your business, okay? There is a new employee onboarding solutions accelerator. It's actually free. It's one that you can plug into your business. However, it's not fully supported by Microsoft support. So it's not actually supported, but if you've got smaller businesses or you are a smaller business or, even up to the, 200 and you don't necessarily want to purchase an onboarding system, I would highly recommend it. It's free and it allows you to be able to plug it directly into your system. So some value there. Now, this isn't particularly new, but if you haven't had a bit of a search around on the Microsoft site in terms of adoption, they've actually now placed up the teamwork governance. So it's a little bit about governance on the Microsoft adoption site to be able to support you when it comes to governance. So if you haven't seen that one before, one I'd recommend. Always keep an eye out on Coffee on the Cloud. This is Caruana's YouTube channel. She's always pushing some great stuff in there. Ones that I would recommend, she's just put out the 3 steps for culture change with Microsoft 365 and considering, kind of we're at the great move happening and resignation and people are moving around. How do we still retain our talent? What does hybrid look like? How do we align, culture and learning and buddying systems and champs programs? And what are all the things that we can do to try and ensure that we're actually kind of keeping our staff strong? So there's always some great information in there. Tournament of Teams, which was part of the Champions platform. Originally, and a lot of the feedback was they wanted to have that for the rest of the business, not just for the champions. So it's been created as a standalone so that you can set up the Tournament of Teams and even have it for your business as a bit of gamification. There is a few enhanced tools that have actually come into it as well, like reporting around it. It's got its own little logo. So it's this sort of app plug-in to be able to support you as part of Tournament of Teams. And it's a great one, free, that you can actually plug in to Microsoft Teams. You can get all the information on GitHub to be able to import it. Don't ask me how to, I can't work Git, so not technical, but good for your business, okay. Now, what's in 365 in terms of what's actually coming down the line? A lot of the times I don't do what's updated, for example, because there's stuff that we kind of know. Sometimes there's some tweaks and changes. Sometimes I will talk about it, sometimes not. It just depends on what's actually happening. I always, and a lot of times, don't forget when I do this, I try not to talk about things that I've said, even what's coming. So this is really the what's new, what's coming, and I don't try to go back over anything. So all of the pages I'm about to hit is a lot, lots that's happening. Right, let's start. The Teams app can now be got through the Microsoft Store. So you can actually go in there and just get it directly from the store now, rather than having to log in to download. Then you can log in, you can do your install and use your corporate ID. So it's a way for staff to be able to get it if they need to. Plus there's that consumer side of it as well. So you can log in with a personal email address. Anonymous meeting join across the cloud. So this means if you wanted to join a meeting that was hosted that was different to your tenant, you're directed to the Teams web experience. Now you can actually join, they can join from their desktop, so they're not automatically, if they're the external party and get pushed up into the cloud, they can now do it through their desktop app when they've done the whole download from the store, for example, rather than being pushed directly to the web. There has been some usability improvements around notifications for iOS that you can actually have come up, and you can then hide them as you need to. There was a couple of changes that I did note in terms of the mobile phone, where it was popping up the reactions across the bottom, and it was covering all of the other features and functionality. So they had a new screen. It wasn't allowing you to get into options. It was a white screen. Has anyone seen it on their mobile phone? It was changing around a few things on the experience, and things were getting in the way. We'll see whether some of that actually changes if you're coming in from your mobile. So we'll see what happens there. Presenter mode, I've been using this one recently. The controls have actually moved, so you get this resized sort of presenter little screen video that you can actually have, and then you can move around and see what your screen looks like. Like anything, when you're doing presenter mode, don't forget that the screen that they're seeing, it does make it smaller, because if you're putting your video beside it, it makes it even smaller. So it's a good idea to go, if it's too small, show them how to even go to full screen if they need to try and make it a little bigger. If it's still too small, sometimes I say hop on your mobile, because at least you can zoom in on your mobile on something that's. But if you are going to do that, there'll be times where you'll need to do your Windows plus key will help you to zoom in, and Windows minus to zoom back out on Windows, so you can zoom in and out for people on devices if you are going to do it. So that's the one downside. Adjusting brightness and soft focus, having come into video. Now, the one thing that I noticed on the screenshot, I'm not sure if you've actually had a look at it, but it's got in here a little picture that we haven't actually seen called video effects. So maybe something is coming down the line where we'll be able to actually have video running behind us in the background as video effects. So there was a little interesting one that I saw on the screenshot. I kind of went, there's a demo photo. The other thing I noticed that's turned off in this demo is mirror my video. So I kind of go, interesting to see in terms of the demo environment as to what things are or aren't on there and when they've taken that screenshot and who's done it. So just a couple of things along the way. The view together mode for everyone. So now you can have it for all participants, but turn it on and off. It says previously this could be enabled for your own personal view, but if you've had a look at the past, it was always for everyone. So I find that really interesting, because that's actually not correct. It was actually previously enabled for everyone with no option to turn it off for personal view. So the fact that that's actually come on, and what they also haven't talked about, apart from the create your own scene, which came in recently, you might have seen it in there, but not talked about on any of the what's going on anywhere. And then a new one I've seen in here they're talking about, but they don't say anything, assigning seats. That's a new little picture there. So I'm kind of going, it's so interesting what's going on in the team and the screenshots that are coming out, but they're not being talked about. Right. Collaborative annotations on presenter shared screens. So before too long, in terms of what's coming, that when you do a screen share, the meeting attendees that have got presenter or organizer, it talks about presenter role, but it'll be organizer role as well, are going to get the little pen, and that pen leads into Whiteboard for you to be able to start annotating on your screen inside Teams using the Whiteboard. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. But of course, if you've got Whiteboard and it's disabled within your business, then of course you're not going to be able to use it. So it depends on what you've got turned on or off. They're expecting that about mid-June. this one, in terms of text predictions on your mobile phone, you may or may not have noticed it coming in, but it will actually usually give you anticipating of your phrase. It started, you saw it on Outlook where you could kind of swipe across and you had some text predictions coming up. Now that's coming over in terms of mobile. The fluent round emojis, they're coming in terms of team reactions. So those reactions that were very kind of static are now getting a little bit more 3D. So that's flowing through as well. There's about 1,800 of them that are coming in terms of emojis. So there's certainly plenty to play with. What's new as well, Power Automate templates are being added into the Teams templates for you to be able to choose from. So you can now select these on the new Power Automate tab so that you can find a variety of them and plug them in. Meeting chat bubbles on the iOS and Android. So you can temporarily turn them off by tapping or go in and just that's a smooth, but you can permanently turn them off as well. So you just go into your settings to have a look at that. Okay. The Teams button, this was one that was rolled out and they did an apology for because it got pushed out without people realizing. If you hold the Teams button down on those certified devices, the peripherals, it actually does the raise the hand in the meeting. So all of a sudden people were, trying to, and they were raising hands and lowering and raising and lowering. And so, one of the other things to be careful of is pressing enter in Teams, depending on where you are. It's been, over the last month or two, a little bit of a bugbear for me. So if I was on my PowerPoint presentation, I press enter, all of a sudden I'm stopped sharing screen if it was the last thing I did. If it was unmuting or muting and it was the last thing I did and I press enter and I wasn't quite on my presentation, next minute I'm muting myself. Or I've shown how to leave or end the meeting. Next minute I've hung up from the meeting. So be careful of that one. Suggested replies in chat, so that part of AI Assist will actually give you 3 created responses so that you can say something in regards to what someone else has said. Okay. Choosing your own status for the meeting. You can come in and you can do a right click on something on the calendar or as part of the drop down. Now they talked about, and that screenshot was interestingly about accepting a meeting. It wasn't actually about your showing as, it was the wrong kind of screenshot in there. So it's a little misleading. So I've put in the screenshot that actually does the calendar show feature for you, because that's what it's about. It's not about necessarily the one on the left. We're still waiting for the accept if it's a hybrid meeting, is it in person or online? Still haven't seen that flow in yet, guys. Okay. The chat filter now for non-meeting chats. So if you're in your chat and you type in what you want to filter and click on the ellipsis, it's now got either chat or meetings in there as part of filtering. There is a new poll type in terms of the question rating. So we can come in and do a bit of a ranking. That's coming out mid-July as part of polls. So it's a new one that's going to hit. This one was interesting. I came across it. There is a new app that's being rolled out, like lists, like bookings, like all the others in Teams, and this one's called Updates. Now, it's a Microsoft app, and as part of Updates, what it is it actually gives you a place where you can create, submit, and review updates where you can keep a track of things. Things like, for example, maybe there are issues out in the field, for example, so they can start to put it in, submit it for a review, and then they can keep a track of it. Now, it's free. There is a lookbook for it. So it could be shifts, it could be equipment, it could be risk, it could be all sorts of things. It flows through onto the mobile phone as well. So you can have, as you saw, this one here is a picture of the different incidences, so you can get a form, and then your team can actually have updates as a way to be able to track. And it's all free, and it's quite a simple interface as an app. So one to keep an eye out. So what's new to Forms? When it comes to mobile phone, lots of new things coming through for the mobile phone, which I do love because I do often create things on the go. But the one thing I do on the go an awful lot more is it's great to have the intelligent suggestions. I love that one. Being able to do the insights. So if I'm actually with a client or I'm talking with someone, I go, well, these are the insights from the meeting. Okay, from the form, so I can show the insights when I'm just on my phone. Don't necessarily need to go full on log into my PC to get to it. But what I do like is that settings and collaboration. Can you share that form with me? You can do it on the go directly from your mobile phone now. So those are the ones that I do particularly like. Now, the forms and quiz on the web, it's going to be rolling out, across all of it through the month of May. And the new experience later will be quiz in team assignments. So if you do, if you're in the education space, flowing through there, the mobile app and Gov. So that'll take a little longer. So later this year. Now there was a ton of stuff in terms of what's coming into OneNote, a whole heap of different things. So as of May, and if you spend a lot of time in OneNote, you would have seen some of the things like the ink to shape, the text, the page sorting, the locking, the all sorts of things. Inserting the picture is coming a little bit later, and the way we share experience. But my favorite, and I put a little bit of a screenshot in here. There's if you go onto this website, there is a whole huge long list of stuff. By the way, I just didn't want to take up the whole presentation with everything OneNote, but it's the fact that you can do transcription and now drop that directly into OneNote. That one I do particularly like, and you can have it tagged against something in particular. In terms of what's new to Yammer, Yammer's been doing over the last month or so, a little bit longer than that. They're doing a best practice and brainstorm episodes. There are all these recordings on the Yammer blog that you can actually go and have a look at. So it's got people coming in from all over the globe talking Yammer and success and what does it actually look like. Highly recommend going and watching those episodes. There's some great people, both local in Australia as well as overseas, talking all things collaboration and social. Okay, plus the couple of blogs to be able to help you there down the bottom. In terms of what's coming to Whiteboard, now this one's a bit of a shift. I think this one's quite interesting. They're now going to be stored in your SharePoint and OneDrive. You're going to have a file that's actually in there that's a Whiteboard file, a bit like, whether it's Excel or OneNote or any of those others, and now it can be searched. So it's going to appear in your search as part of office.com. So it's coming in and then it starts to meet all those IT compliance that you might have in place. So it's now kind of shifting the way that it saves. It's doing it automatically and into your own environment. Okay, so it depends on where you've created it, of course, as to whether it's going to hit your OneDrive or it's going to hit SharePoint. No. In terms of PowerPoint, actually that's an old one. I'm going to delete that page out for you. What's new in Excel? There is a lot. Last month it was very much about what was coming to the web. There's been some real changes coming through in terms of what's happening a little bit more on the desktop. The one that I am particularly impressed with is the recommendations around pivot tables. If you do anything around pivot tables, some of the recommendations that are flowing through and physically showing you as part of the window pane running down the right-hand side, I really like. The other one I do like for the web online is the source linking and being able to fix up some of the source linking as part of where you've got the data from. So they're my two favorites for that list. The what's new in SharePoint, look, there's always lots. It tends to be such a fundamental backbone of Microsoft 365. So let's have a look-see. The create from the SharePoint app bar. So now you can go in and you can create all things like, sites, lists, and anything that's Office from the app bar to be able to help you. So that's been on the roadmap and coming out. Okay. The OneDrive and SharePoint access. In fact, I don't know whether I should put this in here or not, Danielle, whether you'll actually be talking about it, but in SharePoint now, you're going to have your document library saying, these are what are in the channels, and actually give you a little icon to say if it's a private channel, for example. So it'll have the little lock around it to show you. So it's just changing so that it distinguishes it a little bit more for you. Okay. There are planner cards now on the SharePoint team site activity feed. So as you go in, you'll be able to see that, you kind of can't really see, but it gives you the little squares of all the things of recent activity, so all little kind of squares type stuff. So it will come up with recent planner activity in there now. And from that, because it's showing up in the feed, you're then going to have it coming up then across the boards, and things like when it's approaching a due date, it will start to pop up for you in your SharePoint coming out early June. Section templates available across SharePoint pages. So now they'll be able to access those with that sort of plus menu that's coming in on the new tab in the sections. There's a bit there around, and there's quite some impressive section templates there. I've put in some little bit of a help around how to. It depends on, you know, whether you're designing or not on those section templates to be able to support you. What's new in OneDrive? Pinning shared libraries for your quick access on the web. So for your recently opened locations. So it's running down the left-hand side on your quick access, so you can just plug them in. In terms of lists, Microsoft Lists is now for Android. You can get it through the Google Store. So that's one that's been long awaited. So looking forward to that. I've put the link in if you want to know more about it from an Android, and you can push that out in your organization to say they can now do them on the go from their phone. Creating and managing Power Apps from Microsoft Lists within Teams. So I was having a play around with this, really loving it. You know, you can choose either the whole list or individual stuff and start to have both, you know, your do your Power Automate or your Power Apps and start to build it around lists from directly inside Teams. List calendar view. So you've now got an unscheduled pane. So what it does is it will actually put anything that's missing start and end dates over on the far right hand side, so you can edit them and make the appropriate edits to the schedule for lists if it's not got a date against it, because sometimes we create something in lists with no date. So it allows you to go, you haven't got this actually scheduled for a time frame. Okay. You're also going to be able to reschedule by dragging them around from one date to another on the calendar view, liking that one. Okay, that quick drag around makes life just that little bit easier. Okay, and if it's in the unscheduled, you can also drag and drop them from the unscheduled as well. So it's not just what you see and have to go into edit, you can drag and drop them around as you need to on the calendar canvas. So that's now should be out. It said May. We'll see. I didn't go in and just double check on that one. Okay. Microsoft Stream, you can now do the comment on a video or audio file across SharePoint or OneDrive, so it's allowing threaded conversations on the videos. Viva Topics and Outlook for the web is now out and available. So your topic cards, you're going to be able to have a look at those in suggested additional topics in the message pane to support you. And there's also a count of the files and the topics that it actually discovers across it. So you get a little bit more on the insights. If you want, you can go and have a look. So the team, the actual Viva team have put in, there's these as your demo apps, you can go and do a physical click through to physically see what that actually looks like. So you can go and have a look in the demo. There are now shared focus plans in terms of the Visa Insights. So this means that a manager who wants to have to book a daily uninterrupted focus time can do it so that you're all doing it as part of a team and you have the same kind of daily focus, so you're all aligning a little better. So that shared focus plan means that you can have, you know, what's your quiet time to get your work done and be a little bit more productive. So liking that one. Viva Learning has now got, so if you've got particular learning, you can actually add it to your calendar and give you different time slots that you've got in terms of availability to be able to support you on whatever object that you're clicking on. So I like that one because you can have time booked out for specific learning based on a module that you want to do. Okay. There's a YouTube video on a lot of this. I've put a link down the bottom to help you. There's surface learning in terms of content across Microsoft Search. So therefore, when you now do a search, it will also include learning. So there's actually a learning tab up the top. So it's now included as part of it with Viva Learning. So that's seeing some more and more integration coming into search for it. There's now indicators in terms of content that actually requires subscription, because in the past you never quite knew whether you had to pay for something or not. It now gives you a visual indicator for it. And you can also do now inline playback for your LinkedIn Learning on your mobile phone. It used to always kind of kick you off and go over to LinkedIn Learning, but now it allows you to stay within your environment and play it natively within the Teams mobile app. Outlook is having a massive refresh. So if you haven't seen it, it's out there. It's part of the insider preview now. There is a whole heap in regards to the look and feel. I've just grabbed 2 of the screenshots, which was kind of the inbox and the calendar. Highly recommend going and having a look at that. I've also put in some of the things to know about the new Outlook for Windows. This environment is going to be quite different in terms of the look and feel compared to what your users are used to for Outlook. So there might be a bit of freak out considering the changes that are coming down the line. So you might need to do a bit of change management around what's happening to Outlook and the fact that it's actually coming. I mean, this isn't, of course, the final of what it's going to look like, but it is quite a significant shift. I've already been on the new pane, sort of running down the left-hand side and trying to manage that. Is different. It's taking me a bit to get used to. Don't know if I'm a massive fan of it yet at this point, but I'm working with it. I keep trying to look down the bottom because I've done it for a gazillion years. Okay. The dictation controls in Word for 365. So it's actually moving and getting smaller. It used to be quite a big pane that came up down the bottom. Now they're moving it to a much smaller little menu that's sort of running to the top right, off the screen a bit, so it's not in the way. So I do like the fact that that's actually moving around a little bit more, because it was quite a big square down the bottom of the page. In terms of what's new to Loop, we kindly had Dara Webster come and speak with us for 2 months around Loop. There has been an interview with Greg Howard that's actually gone online. Highly recommend it. If you haven't joined his user group around Loop, a great one, go and actually have a look. The last one was around training agendas and notes, and a great story around sort of working with Loop to be able to do that. So highly recommend going and having a look. There is some new Loop components that have come in to Outlook Mail. It is in preview so that you can drop them in. So the general availability, though, for Windows and desktop will start about July. It depends on whether you're having a look at the, if you're in sort of that mode. Events and conferences, these are some of the ones around the world, but I'm more interested in some of the things that are going on in Australia. Keep an eye out. The registration for DEX isn't open yet, but it is coming up in September. If you want to block it out in your calendar, you can subscribe to get the notifications for Digital Employee Experience when it hits. There's the digital workplace experience. This is a global one, but there's actually on-demand recordings. There's some really cool information in here around employee experience and hybrid, and lots happening there. One to have a look at, so you can go register. It's all online. It's free. And then if you can't make it, because it's probably all hours of the morning, you can at least watch the recordings for them. Gartner have their Digital Workplace Summit. It is still virtual, which is awesome. So if you're wanting to do that in June, you could always go in and have a look. Now, SWOOP are doing, their latest report has actually come out. Their big benchmarking survey has actually hit. So if you want to have a look at that, they are going to be running their session very soon. But the brilliant news is we will actually be the first user group and the first event to hold them here next month. They're going to speak with us around all of those results. So if you want to be them, they will be here in person in Sydney. So if you want to pick their brains over it, even before or after the meeting, you might want to be here. Okay, so that's next month. The Yammer Festival, which was a wonderful success last year, they're running it again. It'll actually be at the end of the year, so you can, keep an eye out and register your interest for when it comes out. So that will be coming. It's done in conjunction with Microsoft. Okay, so it's a Microsoft SWOOP Yammer. And on that note, I will hand over to our guest speaker. We have the wonderful Daniel Anderson. He is down in Adelaide. He is currently sitting in the Adelaide Microsoft office to speak with us. He is here to take us through shared channels. Whether you love or hate them, there's some great stuff in there. What I will do is I will let you take over the screen now. If you are there, I'll just pick up my phone because I can actually see you now. So
thank you very much, Kirsty.
Just make sure it's coming up for these guys here. Let me just bring it up so you can see. I'll just maximize. Let's go full screen for everyone here so they can see. Rightio. Thanks very much. I'll let you get to it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, Kirsty. Hello, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining. As Kirsty said, yes, my name is Daniel. I am from Melbourne, but currently sitting in Adelaide in the Microsoft offices here. So not in my usual surroundings. So this is going to be, I've only got one screen. And so let's hope this goes as expected. So what we're going to take a look at today is a little bit about Microsoft Teams shared channels. So we've got the normal channels, we've got private channels, and now we've got this new type of channel called shared channels. So we're going to take a look at what this is all about, how to set it up, and what the experience is like as well. Been using these for a little while now with customers, and the adoption of this from a communication standpoint and a document sharing and collaboration standpoint has been really, really good. A lot better than inviting them as guests into other teams and things like that. So I think it's going to bring some value. So let's dive in and have a look. Just very, very quickly about me. I'm Microsoft MVP, like a few others, familiar faces that I can see in the audience here as well. I have also just founded a new little venture of mine called Loop Collective that is powered by a Loop coin, which is a little creator coin. And I do and am an independent Microsoft 365 consultant as well, and have been for a little while now. I have got a single link there if you want to connect or get in contact with me as well on Linktree, and it's just my name after that as well. So let's kick things off. What are Teams shared channels? So we probably are familiar with standing up teams and sharing or adding guests and external users and things like that to full teams. But what we can do with Microsoft Teams shared channels is create collaboration spaces with people both inside and outside of your organization. So a lot of people think of these in the use case or the concept of external collaboration, but they're very, very useful also. And they've got some great use cases for internal collaboration as well. So the people that are outside of your organization can participate. And this is one of the big key draw cards, is being able to participate in these channels without having to switch organizations or tenants within Teams. So, you know, that rigmarole that you have to go up to the top right-hand corner and change your org, and then you've got access and all that sort of stuff. People miss messages and don't get contacted properly, and you fall back to email, and, you know, what's the point of using that type of thing, right? So the guests, there's a little bit of a difference here. So guests or Azure Active Directory guest accounts can't be added to the shared channels. So what we need to do is we use what we call Azure AD B2B Connect. All right, so we're going to have a quick look at that. I won't go into too much detail about that, but that's how the people outside of your organization are actually invited. And it does require, and this, you know, it can and probably will cause a few questions and issues and that type of thing. It does require some configuration. So it's not as easy as just adding, creating a shared channel and adding people to it. There are some configuration and some cross-tenant access settings that need to be configured both in your tenant, but also in the tenant that you are, or the user's tenant that you are trying to collaborate with as well. So it's a two-way thing that needs to happen. So as I just mentioned, each organization that you do want to share channels with must also complete this configuration on their end as well. All right. Only owners and members of the shared channels can access them. And why we really use them, I've kind of already mentioned that before, is collaborate with groups of people who are all members of, or potentially members of, different teams. So we're thinking internally here across departments and things like that, when we may have had to have stood up another team. So if there's users from this team and that department and this function, we may have had to stand up another team. But now we don't have to. We can just use a single shared channel. They are linked to the parent team, which we'll have a look at in a minute, especially from a file access point of view and a navigation side. When we get into the SharePoint side of things, we can access from the shared channel. We can access the parent team quite easily as well, but it can't be moved to a different team, and obviously it can't be converted to a standard channel, and vice versa as well. Now, I mentioned Azure B2B Connect just before. This does and can be configured for each organization that you do want to collaborate with, but you can enable shared channels with all external organizations as well. So you don't actually have to go org by org. You can have this open to everybody. Now, once it is enabled, team owners can invite people from the other organizations, and any line of business apps will be available also in the shared channels. The org apps list will also be available in those shared channels, and the external participants can actually access them as well. Now, I won't go through these step by step. We will jump into Azure AD and just have a quick look at where this is all set. It's very, very easy to set up. It's just a few clicks and we're done. But we do have to configure both the inbound and the outbound configuration options in Azure AD. It is part of the external identity section in there, and it is called the cross-tenant access settings. All right, so we will jump in and have a look. As I said, when you to invite people in other orgs, we need to set that setting, but also to allow users to participate in shared channels in other organizations. So outside of your organization, we do have to set that up as well. It's in the same spot, so it makes it nice and easy. There are some team policies teams policies in the Teams admin center as well that do need to be configured or can be configured and can be rolled out from that side of things. So if there are, we don't want to make this available to everybody, let's say, we could just apply this not at a default global policy. We could create Teams policies and apply that to certain groups or people as well. A couple of other key points, I guess, to make here as well is just around the deletion of channels and the archiving as well. So channels, they can be restored within 30 days. When they are restored, all the membership that was there previously will be restored as well. When the team's deleted, the shared channels are deleted as well. Once they're restored, they will also be restored as well. So when the team's restored, those shared channels will be restored as well. When a team's archived, the individual sharings will remain. The sharing with teams other than the parent will be removed though, and we'll take a look at those sharing options in just a second too. Check from a SharePoint side and the file access side. Before I do that, Matthew has got a question.
Sorry to interrupt, Daniel, but just back before you go on, I'm just playing with this as we speak, right? So you've already taught me something, so thank you very much. You questioned whether you would, but you have already, so well done. I can see, and so obviously our SharePoint configuration, I'm in a new organization, right? But I can see shared channels in my teams, but I can't create them. So even though I'm the team owner, so it looks like that the channel, the policy's not turned on to create a shared channel. But when I go to the back end of my team and see the channels, I've actually got a list of 0 shared channels there. Is that normal behavior? Have you seen that?
A list of 0 shared channels.
Yeah, like it's a drop down. There's nothing underneath it, right? Well, I've got active channels, shared channels, and deleted channels are the 3 things I can see in the admin tab, if you like, for channels. But when I go and add a channel, I can't create one. It's not an option to create a shared channel.
No, I haven't seen that.
Cool. Oh, I just figured it was populated there by default that you can see shared channels, but sorry to sidetrack you too, by the way, but yeah.
It's only available in the preview client at the moment, Teams. So if you don't have preview mode turned on in your Teams client, you don't see.
Oh, well, that is true. Yes.
A shared channel.
Have you got preview mode, Matt?
Great question. I don't know the answer. But okay. Yeah.
Did you hear that, guys? Hang on, let me come over a bit closer to Sean.
Yes, we did. So it's the preview. Yeah, it's the preview client. Correct.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Now I know what to go and ask my IT team for help with to get that to happen. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool. No worries. Okay. SharePoint side of things. Each shared channel does have its own site collection. All right. Just like with private channels, we do then, when we create a shared channel, we do have its own SharePoint site as well. So that obviously does ensure the access to those shared channels, the channel files is restricted. We can utilize the full site through that SharePoint as well. So the files, the folders, the OneNote notebooks, and all that sort of stuff can also be shared outside of that channel using the standard sharing functionality that we are used to with OneDrive and SharePoint as well. Okay, I'm going to stop presenting that deck, and I will now present my screen, my single screen. So let's do that right now and pop that down. So the first thing I will take a look at is just that Azure B2B settings for any IT or admin in the room or watching as well. So from Azure AD here, we've got in the left-hand side, we've got external identities, and then we've got the cross-tenant access settings as well. Now, I mentioned before about the inbound and outbound. So we've got the inbound settings here where we can configure the B2B direct connect settings, and we've got allow access here, and also all external users and groups are set there. So that's the inbound settings. And then we also do have the outbound settings. So we can see here the outbound determines whether the users in this tenant can be invited to the external Azure AD organizations. All right, so when we click on here, this one allows us to be a little bit more granular. So we can select groups of people in our organization that can collaborate externally. So there may be instances where you don't want everybody to be able to collaborate externally, but just certain groups of people. Then we can set even right down to users if you want to do users, or you've got groups as well. So that's sort of the configuration side. And I mentioned before also, it does need to be set up at the other party's end as well for that to work. Okay, Teams policies, as I said, from a Teams policy side, we've got the ability here to turn on or off the creation of shared channels like we already do with private channels as well. So we can have some Teams policies around that. Okay. All right, what does this all look like? All right, so what we're going to take a look at, we'll look at an internal, I guess an internal use case first. So a lot of times we may have, or organizations may have different, an overarching department or functional area with smaller teams or groups or functions underneath that. So if we take sales and marketing or sales in general as an example, we may have an overarching sales team, but then we might have regional teams or sub-functional areas. So in this case, we've got US sales and we've got AU sales as well. So what might happen here is that not everybody has got access. So US sales and AU sales and users like that may not have access to sales and marketing, for example. So, but the people or the heads of sales may want to provide updates to the rest of the smaller functional teams. So rather than setting up another team, what we could do and what they could do is add a channel. And you can see here that we've got standard, private, and shared. And you can see that, Matt, for here I'm in the preview client, so I've got the availability of that channel option there. So we've got standard, private, and shared. All right, so we might go for sales updates. Let's just call it sales updates. Now, one of the things here is that we don't have to share this channel with everyone on the team. So if this overarching sales team has 30 people in it, we could pick a subset of that. So it kind of almost becomes a private shared channel in that case. So we can pick and choose users from that team to have access to this shared channel. I'll just leave it for everybody and we'll create that team. So that channel. So that channel is now going to be created, and then we can share that with other people or other teams. So you can see here that we can share, type the name of somebody in the org that we want to add to the channel, or we can also add people outside the organization, but we're just going to skip that for now. So when we go to this channel, you can see that there's a little icon here shows that it's a shared channel. And we can, once we hover over here, we've got 3 options. So we can share it with people, we can share it with another team, or we can share it with a team that you own. Now, I just need to double check to make sure this team here, that Megan owns it. That's a good thing. So let's just jump back into share channel. We can share this with the team that I own. So you can see here that I own AU sales and US sales. So I'm just going to share it here with US sales. See, that team's got 7 members. Now these 7 members may not have access to that sales team. Okay. Now, how that appears is that we've now got that sales updates shared channel as part of this US sales team. So if I jump back up into sales and marketing, we can start a new conversation there. And that will then appear in, I hope. That's a really good start. Just refresh my browser. Just love live demos. And there we go, I posted it twice, even better. So we jump into US sales, same thing, sales updates. We jump back up into sales and marketing, sales updates, and it's the same messages, all right? So we can now, as a sales leader, as a sales director, just because what tends to happen is that the US sales team and the AU sales team are, as you would expect, working in their team. So working in their functional areas, in that particular team, and they may not check, or they may not even have access to other information or other messages that are appearing in that sales and marketing team. A lot of things get missed. So by having that channel as part of their team, then it just means that communication is in the place that they're working, and dare I say, in the flow of work of where they're operating out of. All right, so there's lots of different use cases there, and that shared channel can obviously be added to any other team. It doesn't necessarily have to be the sales team. There could be a number of marketing teams or things like that we want to share that information with. So it just makes a nice, easy way to be able to share that conversation, even the files, with that group of people. So you'll also
we have a question for you from the room. The camera's not pointing at it, but I've got here. It's Mel. Hi. Listen, I'm just wondering, is that they're absolutely a duplicate of each other, but does that only happen because you said everyone in the team is a member of the original and you invited the whole second team? Because what if someone in the first, like the sales and marketing team, wasn't in that channel? Would they see it? Or if someone in the US sales posted but the other team wasn't a member, would they see it?
If they weren't a member of that channel, no, they won't.
Right, so it'll be a different experience for them then. Yeah, okay.
Correct. So if I wasn't a member of this, then I wouldn't see that at all. Okay. Similar to private channels, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So you can also see that we can share with other teams or with people as well. All right. So you don't have to have another team that you share it with. You can actually invite or share it with individual people as well. All right. And that appears in their team's channel too. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is I won't use this channel. I'll use a different channel that I've already had pre-prepared, and then we'll jump into the SharePoint experience as well. So you can see here that I've got another team called Design, and I've got a shared channel that's already been set up here, and I've shared that with an external user. So I've shared that with my external user account here. And you can see that I've got profile pictures, I've got presence, I've got everything like that appear for this external user, which is a really nice enhancement there too. Now, if I jump into my team's environment, we can see here that I've got this, my internal teams. So I've got internal team, but you can see here that this team design, let me just expand this, design at Contoso. I've now got access to this team. I don't have to jump up to here and change organizations or switch tenants. I've got that channel and I've only got access to that channel. So I can now have conversations there, and we can see that that then comes across into here. And this is Megan responding. And then I've now got that access directly inside of my team's experience here. And I don't need to leave that, leave my tenant to then access that conversation or that channel. Same thing with files. I'll have access to the files that are stored in that channel like we normally do in Teams. I'll have access to that directly from within, within my Teams tenant. Now, what's interesting to note here is that if I now decide I'm logged in as Megan, this is the, let's just call it the instigating tenant. If I now say I want to remove, I don't want Daniel to have access to this channel anymore. So we can see here that I've got access, like so. Then if I just say, no, we don't want him there, we don't want him to be a member of that channel anymore, this will then just disappear. So you can see there live, I removed that account from that shared channel, and that has now automatically removed that channel from the external user accounts Teams instance. Okay, so it's live, it does it straight away, basically, and it just removes access from there. Now, we also mentioned before that from a SharePoint side of things, that we create and we have our own SharePoint site. So US sales has its own SharePoint site, as we know. Sales and marketing has its own SharePoint site. Now this sales updates shared channel has a files tab. Do all of the things that we can with a normal team, sync it, add shortcut to OneDrive, etc. Now we can also open it in OneDrive. Open the files in SharePoint. So we can see here that this URL, sales and marketing dash sales updates. So it's an entire new site collection, like a private channel. But we can also see on the left-hand side here, and I'm in the documents library of the shared channel, we can go directly back to the channel. But we've also got a link and an item in the navigation here for the parent team. So I can navigate freely to the parent team as well as the shared channel. So from the shared channel, we can go to the parent team. All right, so it's a nice, easy way to navigate to that private channel, or navigate to the parent of that private channel as well, because every single shared channel has a parent as well. So from that side of things, it makes it a little bit easier for people that have access. Now, if I didn't have access to that parent team, then obviously I wouldn't have access to the files of that team or that SharePoint site. And we could. Sure.
We've got Matthew with his hand up, and there's another one that's actually online as well.
Sure, fire away.
My question was about file access. So you removed Daniel from the team and he no longer had access to the team, but what if he'd synchronized the files to his local device from that channel?
That is a very good question, Matthew.
And can they sync them even as well?
Yeah. I don't have an answer for that. I will get back to you.
The other one we've got
Wouldn't that just be point in time? That at the point in time where you've done it, It's the rights that you have at that point in time. And if rights and roles change, then that would follow that point in time.
Yes, potentially.
One to test out or ask the team.
I'll take that. I'll take that
I
offline.
know that at the moment Planner doesn't work in shared channels. There are a few things around apps. We've had a question around, what apps are actually working, in terms of lists and a few other things.
So as far as I know, all of these apps are working. I've tested these and used these apps. Planner, no, that doesn't work. But from my understanding, the rest of these do work.
Another question, would you choose a private channel versus shared channel with a subset of members from the same team? I think it comes down to that, the why message. Why would you choose
Depends
private?
why.
Why would you share? Why should you just maybe do a whole new team and have that instead? What is the use case for the audience, especially when you start at the change side?
Yeah, I guess there's lots of different. I mean, it depends question. Depends what you're trying to achieve. There's instances where a whole new team would be a better option. As opposed to just a single channel. So if you needed, whether it's a project or something like that you had different streams of work, then you can't really do that in a shared channel. And you might need different channels for different streams of work and that type of thing. So it is a kind of what's the outcome that you're trying to have would determine that.
Look him up. Hang on. What's his name again? His name's Daniel Anderson. Let's have a look who he is.
I thought he worked for Microsoft.
No, I'm sure he's not. He's not smooth enough for a Microsoft.
Sorry, we're just mute. You're being talked about behind your back there, Danielle.
I'm not smooth enough to be what? Just continue.
Turn it back on so we can hear the rest of the
Sorry,
conversation.
we didn't realise you're on mute. I'm talking. Sorry, guys, didn't hear.
It's okay,
No, we were just wondering if you work for Microsoft or not.
No, I don't work for Microsoft.
No, we didn't think so. Yeah, that's all right. No, you're doing a great job. Sorry.
No, we're MVPs, so
Yeah, okay.
Matthew, who's on the call, is asking questions, and myself and Daniel, we're all MVPs, so we're kind of tied into very heavily, of course, to the Microsoft team, product managers and engineers. So, but no, we're not employees. Let you keep going. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right. Just conscious of time as well. So, Kirsty, that's pretty much all I had from a demo perspective. So I will.
Thank you for that. That's certainly been very informative. And in fact, I think the very last video I did with Collab Talk was a bit of a scenario around what they should actually use around whole teams or private or shared, and we kind of pulled it apart from sort of a technical as well as an end user perspective. And it does, as Matthew said, it always comes down to that. It depends, or I have more questions. But in shared channels, I know, I mean, being in preview mode, it's getting there. We'll suppose wait and see what the final looks like too. Okay. Are there any other questions before we look at trying to keep an eye out online? So question, can you address any potential risks that might put security teams off?
Where do I start? Yeah, there are a few. That the syncing, I guess the syncing aspect is one that could potentially. Now, one of the things that there is in the Azure AD, in those settings that we walked through, is the ability to honor MFA and that type of thing as well. So that there is some settings from that side of things that hopefully would put security people minds at ease a little bit more, then well, hope that well, it's called the trust settings. So being able to trust multi-factor authentication from Azure AD tenants, also trust compliant devices and trusts the hybrid Azure AD join devices as well. So there are some trust settings there from a security side that can be configured as well, that can be turned on and off.
Would you say, Danielle, one of the things that I do know is like, what's your governance, what's your process to approval, what's your tick boxes you need for an external, a bit like you do with federation. Do you have to go sometimes through a process of going, are you going to federate with an external party, and what does it actually look like for that federation? And, when you come to the AFSA, you really have to think about it and go, well, who do you trust and what organisations are on your inner circle of trust, and what's the process look like to be built out?
You're saying if you are federated with a company, then there would be no extra risk in allowing them into a shared channel. That's what I wanted to confirm.
Yeah, that's it. If you are federated, yes, but if you're not, and it's a random external party or vendor who hasn't gone through a process, then that's when the questions will come into play, I suppose. Now, Sean, you said you've got it set up. Is there anything in particular that you've had to do around setting up for BPay?
So I haven't got the shared channels working yet.
I'll come a bit closer to
I've been playing. The key to it is the collaboration settings in Azure. That's only new. The stuff you talked about with the sharing of MFA and device compliance, we implemented that, and it's awesome because VP's going through a merger. And bringing 4 Microsoft tenants together with completely different security postures, ours being most secure.
It would be a BPay,
and so we had a lot of issues where we were inviting others to our teams, and they were complaining about.
We're getting on the camera. Here you go.
So one of the challenges we were having was the other companies were complaining about how many prompts they had to go through and how frequently they had to access our team's environment, SharePoint, and all those sorts of things. And so when we set up, so we use the collaboration settings to get around that, and it's now completely seamless. So that experience to access a document that's shared through SharePoint or switching tenancies in Teams, because before shared channels, doing that goes from 3 or 4 prompts every hour to nothing. Just switch, bang, you're in the other tenant. And that was awesome doing that, and great feedback on it. Getting the shared channels working, and I think probably because it is still quite preview, is I haven't been able to successfully do it yet, because there's more than just, you've got to enable a bunch of things. I think it's just the collaboration settings I haven't got right yet, the B2B Connect.
Yeah.
I think I'm missing one of the outbound.
Would you say that, and I think is, something we need to think about from a security perspective, are you better off to have a shared channel where you just got one compared to potentially having a whole team and exposing other information on other content?
I think where it's going to be useful for us is we've got teams now that are working across the different
business units.
And so we'll be able to create, so we have a tenant for the new company that not many people are in yet. We're all still in our own tenancies. So where there's a team that's with members across the board, we can create a new team for that in the new tenancies with a shared channel across all of the other tenancies, so that everyone can work together without switching in and out of their home tenant and all those sorts of things. And then eventually everyone's going to end up in that other tenant anyways, and then it'll be there. We'll have those challenges to deal with.
It's good to see one of the use cases and how you could potentially do and why you would do it. That's half the battle, isn't it? Is giving a reason or a benefits case to potentially be turning something on, or why is always a challenge.
My thoughts on the when to go private versus
shared
as well purely comes down to the audience, right? So private channels can only live within the team and can only have the subset of membership of the team that they're in.
Yeah, whereas this pushes it into other teams if you wanted to.
Anyone outside of the team, you don't want to ever give them access to
everything.
The key team, then it has to be shared. And that rules out private channels. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same thing from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and it'll be the tech that's going to be available. I mean, either way, it's going. I mean, one of the things about private is you get a whole new SharePoint site, whereas a shared, you don't. You know, you do get the whole new site. You know, you're kind of kicking in potentially as well. A lot of things disconnect, and that can you come back from a shared?
It's almost an argument. Like it's just a shared channel, but
it's just
members of this team all in, or just some?
Just some in, yeah.
That the ability to subset membership and invite out. So when we did our teams rollout, we created teams at a divisional level. So technology, corporate services, people and culture. And one of our biggest challenges is then, well, now how do we collaborate between? Yeah, it's all well and good if you're only talking to people within your division, but if
you need HR right across 4 different companies, then
this will fix that. Because we can create a shared, whoever owns the channel, like the content, the shared channel is created in that divisional team, but it can be shared across the other divisions.
Good case for it, especially where you've got, I mean, mergers and acquisitions around the globe is, pretty huge. There's a lot going on there. So thank you for that. So it gives us a bit of an idea. Is there any other, sorry, this chat, if there's any other opinions on that one? Matthew, he's got his hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, just adding, I mean, I think this is really beneficial. Obviously, like you do, Kirsty, and I'm sure Daniel does, we're cross-tenant all the time, right? We're federated into Microsoft. We've got our own tenants. I've now got a new org and an old org tenant as well still to play with. It's just, sharing that information. And whilst Teams has solved a lot of our communication problems, it's created some more for us. Yeah. And one of those is when I can't get you inside of Teams, how do I share information with you? And we make, even internally in organizations, we make massive assumptions about what people have access to. Well, haven't you seen that? It's in the team. I hear that a lot, right? And well, I don't have access to that team. So I think this is, obviously we're early days for this technology, but this is a step in a very good direction, I think, about being able to share information inside of where we're doing a lot more of our work in Teams. So I really learned a lot from that. That was an excellent topic.
I've started using it with customers, and where I'll have a team based for a project or whatever, and internal, I've got one channel that's shared with the external organization, and the usage increase that I've seen from the external people around that has been tenfold more than that on over and above what just creating a brand new team is. I mean, it just is, well, for me, it's been really, really good.
That cross-team collaboration.
Yeah.
I reckon that's really interesting from an adoption perspective as well,
Yeah,
Kirsty.
that tenant switch is always, a bit of a pain in terms of Microsoft Teams. So it's certainly a benefit for me. I know that with so many tenants that I'm in and out of, it's crazy.
Well, I think that worse than the tenant switching is the going back to email switching. So that's a different platform, right? So when you force people back to email, guess where they stay? Back in email. Yeah. Right. So yeah, being able to help them drive to Teams, I think is really useful.
And missing information because you are switching from tenant to tenant, I tend to miss too much because I'm not over in that tenant and I haven't been over there for hours or a day or sometimes even days if I haven't sort of thought about it. For example, I have to set a reminder to move from tenant to tenant. So certainly a value for me in that case. Great conversation, guys. I think that it's certainly one to really think about and have a look at, and who you got federated and have that process around it for security and anything and everything that we're kind of thinking of. So one to keep going. Danielle's information, I've actually got all on the user group. So if you want to follow up on anything in terms of socials, please feel free to connect with him. Thank you. That was awesome, Danielle. Appreciate you presenting back in. On the finals, I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff. A few things I've changed around or added in. Don't forget, Caruana's got her adoption support Twitter and the newsletter there that you can join up. I have put in a couple of new resources in here, ones that were originally pages that I've had previously, I've now dropped in. This one seems to be getting smaller and smaller in its links, so, my apologies. I probably should start putting across multiple pages. But I've put in there some of the adoption playbooks and some more that will come through fairly soon. considering some of the changes. I've put in, some of the latest information where I find it. I've made some changes on here, and definitely included the tech community, because I go through all the blogs across all the various topics on the tech community to give you a lot of what we've got here today, plus all the find out more. I click on all of those too, so I can add in other stuff. So that's where I do pass it on. The user groups that are around, and I probably need to update some of this, so if you do know of any more, we do have it all available on the very top link. They're all ANZ user groups. It's actually on GitHub, so we do try to keep that one up to date as an MVP community. So if you're looking for anything else, including all the technical, there's a lot of technical as well, should you wish to join those ones. I will update this particular slide with the link the moment it actually goes up for next week. But if you want to look at all the past, any of the past history, this is where I've got all the past history. They're all up on my YouTube channel, which is the M365 adoption is the YouTube channel that I've put up there. So what's next? On the 5th of July, I was trying to do it on the first Tuesday of the month, unless we've got sort of issues with speakers being able to do that particular day. We will have hybrid. And I will have food here next time around, I promise. Now, Danielle, did you still have a prize that you were wanting to give away? I forgot about that one.
Oh yes, well, I can put that. I can put my slide up now. For any of you that do have what's called a Solana wallet.
I do. I set it up based on your YouTube video.
Based on my YouTube video.
I have no idea what I'm doing, by the way, but yeah.
Very, very good. Well, I'll put this last screen up. So if you would like a little prize and some Loop coin that I can gift you and give to you, then you can use these links, fill out, create a Solana wallet, which, yes, is a crypto wallet for those that haven't heard of it. I do have the Loop coin, and I can give away a stack of Loop coin to you if you create a Solana wallet and fill out that form.
And what can you do with your Loop coin?
So with that Loop coin, is going to give you access to a community, a Microsoft 365 community built for Web3, which is going to be rather unique. And there's going to be a lot of perks, rewards, benefits, access, training, workshops, and dare I say, potential increase in coin value. So everybody could win by holding a Loop coin or hundreds of Loop coins.
Right. Also, excellent news. Izzy, if you want to be on future sessions, if you just go to Meetup, we're on Meetup, and you can register for any sessions as they come up. We don't have them there in advance. I just will push them out, and you'll get an email around each one from Meetup to remind you to start. So next month, thanks for that, Danielle. Next month, we will have SWOOP coming in. As I said, they'll be doing their benchmarking report. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. It was a huge amount of people globally that were actually involved in the benchmark report. So I look forward to having the team come in and chat with us around that in terms of some of the best practice inside businesses. So hopefully we'll see some here, and I will have some lunch for everyone on the next one. I wasn't quite sure how this one was going to go, but next month we'll have some lunch for everyone too. Any other thoughts or questions? If not, thank you very much for joining us for the session, both online and in person. And I look forward to next month's session. At any point, you can connect with me through Twitter. It's just, Kirsty McGrath 13, or I've got the M365 adoption on Twitter. All my links are actually in the presentation. I will not probably be able to get the YouTube up today, considering I'm in the city and I've got the joys of going to the dentist this afternoon. Lucky me. But I'll certainly try and have it up as soon as possible. I'll push it out on social media, as well as I'll put it into the comments on this particular group for the day. The next user group will be up and running fairly shortly. I'll try and take that live for you to be able to register for it fairly soon. thank you everyone for joining in and hope you've enjoyed the session. All right, we'll close out. Why, thank you. Thank you so much, Dale, for coming in. Appreciate you joining.